Hello fellow noobs, it's a Noob No More here, Risk Grandmaster looking to grow the community, this time we're continuing with the Noobiversity series. We're going to explore why Good Neighbour Theory works. Why? Well, when most players just start the game, or if you notice you're playing lots of novices and beginners, they tend to do the opposite of Good Neighbour Theory. They do Bad Neighbour Theory. They'll try and take their own bonus but break you when you try and form yours, or if they might just see you having a bonus and just break you anyway. It's quite interesting to me that when new players come to the game, they don't employ Good Neighbour Theory. It's almost like it's the initial part of human nature is to play Bad Neighbour when you come and playing Risk. But Good Neighbour Theory is actually most of the time the optimal way to play. So we're going to go through and explain why that is. And what we're also going to do is explain when it's not the right time to play Good Neighbour Theory, because I think most good players or experienced players tend to play Good Neighbour, and maybe they play it too often. So we're going to explore that topic as well a little bit later on. All right, so what is Good Neighbour Theory or G&T? Well, it's not the G&T that those of you that are over the requisite age would know and potentially love. It's not a gin and tonic. It's actually a theory within Risk whereby you don't break someone's bonus if they've got one. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's where you're being a friendly neighbour. You don't break someone that's formed a bonus. It doesn't need you to have a bonus as well, but most of the time what happens is two people are going to have bonuses next to each other. They do the fist bump to say, let's be friends and not break each other. And that's generally what most people would think of as good neighbour. But you can also be a good neighbour even if you don't have a bonus. If you remember Pete's rank up series on progressive, his was about having 3 or more separate armies around the board, not breaking people's bonuses when they form them, just trying to stay out of trouble and be a good neighbour. So it doesn't mean that you also have to have a bonus. But most of the time, you want to think about a classic fixed game where two people, one person has Europe, say, and one person has North America, and they sit peacefully side by side and both grow together. And that's the advantage of Good Neighbour Theory, is that you both end up growing together relative to the other players on the board, rather than getting into some war and both of you ruining each other's games. So I've just got some very quick baselines here. Don't be scared of all the numbers just yet. We're just going to go through some very simple examples. And this is the neutral baseline. So you can see I've got neutral Nelly and passive Paul over there. They're the first two players. And everyone starts with 20 troops, and they get 3 per turn on their first turn. And what I'm saying is that nobody goes for bonuses in this example. Everybody either just attacks one territory, gets a card, doesn't lose a troop, and everybody gets attacked once. So everybody loses a troop. So everybody makes 2 troops per turn. And so they go from 20 to 22 after turn 1 and 24 after turn 2. And you can just see that everybody stays completely equal in this scenario until the cards start to play a bit more of a role. But you can see that's a very neutral baseline. Everyone stays equal relative to each other. Okay, so let's have a look at the bad neighbour example now. We've got bonus Barry up the top, and then we've got breaking Bender right after them. So in this case, what bonus Barry does when they get their 3 troops is imagine that they take the Europe continent and they park a 5 on Iceland. That's right up the top left-hand territory in Europe. And then breaking Brenda comes along and says, well, I'm not having that. And they attack the 5 of bonus Barry and they win, and bonus Barry loses their 5 troops. So you can see that in that instance, you can see that Barry's actually going to lose 2 troops in total, and so they go from 20 to 18. Now, what about breaking Brenda? Well, she's normally going to lose 4 troops when attacking that 5. That's what would be the expected value from attacking 5 troops, is that you're going to lose 4. So again, I've just tried to pick what's the most common or the most likely or centered outcome. They lose 4 troops. And then, of course, someone else has to attack one of their territories. That's part of the assumption. So they lose another territory from someone attacking their one elsewhere. So they also lose 5 troops for a net loss of -2 and end up at 18 as well. Everyone else just does their neutral thing, and they just keep on getting a net 2 troops per turn, and they move up to 22. So you can see that even after turn 1 of there being someone that grabs a bonus and defends it, which is more often than not what happens, you can see that both of these guys are now down at 18 troops, and everyone else is up at 22. So that's a good example straight away of how, if you're playing bad neighbour, you're actually ending up in a worse position than what you'd be relative to the other players. You're down 4 troops relative to all the other players. Then, of course, I've put in a scenario here which doesn't have to happen, but let's just say there's a big retaliation, and Barry says, nope, I'm not having that, and puts 10 troops into you, and you lose 10 troops, or he puts 5 troops into you, and then you put 5 troops back into them, and you end up in this big death spiral, and now you're down at 11, everyone else is up at 24. So if there's any chance of retaliation as well, you've got to think about that in terms of the bad neighbor scenario. And you can see how quickly, if anybody does retaliate, that you can quickly go down and ruin each other's games. Because even if you just do it for one turn, you're so far behind that it's very difficult to come back and make a comeback and win the game from there. The next example is Good Neighbor. And the Good Neighbor example is when instead of breaking Bonus Barry's bonus with his +5 that he's put up there, you go and take North America. All right, so let's just say you go and take North America. So everyone gets their 3 troops. Everyone just loses 1 in this example, and I know you probably have to be attacking more than 1 territory to get the bonus. I'm just trying to create a stylized example here. But then at the next turn, both of you end up getting +5. So Bonus Barry gets their +5 for Europe, and Friendly Fred gets their +5 for North America. Then what happens, of course, is that you're now getting 8 troops at the start of the turn. Everyone else is doing nothing in this example. Again, I'm just trying to create it relative to a neutral baseline to paint the image of what I'm trying to say. And you can see now that Bonus Barry and Friendly Fred are, instead of being down the bottom and in this death spiral, are up at 29 troops, and everyone else is at 24. So that's just the theory of why it's better to be good neighbor than bad neighbor. You get to both grow together in a relative sense, rather than going into the death spiral down into a losing position. So let's go through a real world example. This was the Classic Risk semi-final, Classic Risk tournament semi-final. It's a 70% game. You can tell that because of the leader 28 up here. So if someone gets 70%, then they win the game. And these are all grandmasters, experienced players in a tournament setting. And I think all of them were masters or grandmasters, I should say, but experienced players. And you can see what happens is that people start talking about and forming their bonuses. So JJ Bra in purple started taking Australia. I was very lucky. I got an early North America. And you can see that red and green were lagging a little bit, but they do start to try and go. The green player starts to go for Europe, and the red player starts to go for and gets South America. And this is a good example of why it's good to play Good Neighbour Theory. If you get into some wars with people, your chance of being able to run the 70% later is a lot less because you just don't have the troops to do it. So this is a real world example. This was a VC tournament as well. We were able to talk to each other, and we were able to negotiate who was going to go for what bonus. And this is a good example of Good Neighbour Theory where nobody broke anybody else in order to try and everybody have the best chance of running the 70% at a later stage. So for those of you who don't know, 70%, you've got to get 30 territories on the 42 territory classic map. That's how you win the 70% game. So you're trying to get big enough and get enough troops to be able to do that. Obviously going into a bad neighbor fueled war with someone just means you never end up having the troops to do it. So everybody's good neighbor until they're not. And I think that's a good segue into when to go bad neighbor. And there are some examples of when you do actually want to go bad neighbor. And I think there might be some instances in the community now where people are doing too much Good Neighbour Theory and they're not necessarily thinking about the exceptions. And there are definitely some exceptions. So let's start going through them one by one. And the first one is you can win the game. Obviously, if you can win the game, it doesn't really matter if you break people's bonuses at that point. They can't retaliate for one, and you've won the game, more importantly, for second, and that's what it's all about. So that's a good example of when you do want to go through Good Neighbour, or you do want to break people's bonuses. So you can see here I'm getting a healthy bonus from actually holding North America, and I've just gotten a 10 trade, and you can see I've got 19 troops to deploy. And you can see the very furrowed brow. I'm trying to calculate, do I have enough for the 70? Can I go up through this way? Can I go down through this way? Maybe this goes this way. The 13 goes down. This 13, unfortunately, can't do anything. Maybe I can use the 6. I'm starting to think about whether or not I can go on and win the game. That's what I'm trying to do here. And let's see how I go. So you can see some very furtive or very aggressive mouse movements. I'm doing some quick calculations and I'm trying to work out if I can win the game. All right, let's see if I do it. So I am breaking JJ's Africa there, and I'm moving into green, which I think is Helby's Europe. I get a bit lucky there with a 2-on-1, but you can see I'm just trying to take all the light territories, the territories that don't have a lot on them, in order to try and run the 70%. And we're continuing, we're running, and now I can use the 15 to come across, and I get the 70% and win the game, and I'm slightly happy about it. Oh, I'm wearing the same shirt. Okay, moving on. So obviously that's one pretty big exception if you can win the game. Not that you're wearing the same shirt. It's if you can win the game, that's a pretty good reason to break Good Neighbour Theory. So that's one. The second one is they can't hit you back. I was playing a game and I was playing Sad Boy. I thought it was Slip World initially, but anyway, I was playing Sad Boy, and Jimmy and I were both fighting over North America. So you can see Blue's taken South America, Orange has taken Africa, Pink's taken Europe, and Green's about to take Australia. So White and Black, Jimmy J, White, and I were about to have to fight over North America. And instead of fighting over North America, this is still turn 1, so I do get 6 troops. What I decide to do is I decide to do something that I very rarely do in the first turn of a fixed game. So this is a classic fixed with portals, stable portals, is that I decide to go Bad Neighbour and break Blue completely out of their position. Why do I do that? Because on my basis or my calculations, they couldn't hit me back. They had to come through my 3 here, a portal here, to break me. And possibly that's what they should have done or could have done. I think they were just trying to stay alive. But they couldn't actually hit me back, which is interesting. And so that's one of the reasons that I went and did a Bad Neighbour, is I got something out of it. I got a continent. So I'm going to reclaim the lost troops back very quickly. But more importantly, it gets me out of this position where Jimmy and I were going to be fighting each other for North America, and neither of us would end up winning in that scenario. So I could foresee a scenario where I got a continent, I got out of Jimmy's hair, and then we both went Good Neighbour and each other. And please go, and I'll link that video down in the description. Go and watch the end of that game. But Jimmy and I, what I will say is, slight spoiler alert, is that Jimmy and I end up going 1-2 in that game and having a pretty epic 3-player endgame, and then a pretty epic 1v1 endgame as well. So it actually turned out pretty well, and the Good Neighbour Theory actually held. So again, that's a good example, and I've still got the video rolling here because I just want to show you one thing, which was Blue trying to come through, and they didn't add all there. They could have come through and potentially broken my bonus and slowed me down in a retaliatory strike. But you can see it doesn't have much teeth to it. I'd just get it back next turn, and you know, Blue would be very quickly eliminated thereafter. So Blue stopped there at that point. You can see they've gone into the fortify phase, and they, unfortunately for them, they were very quickly out. So I did feed that kill to someone else, but that was an example of where they can't hit you back. So as a result of that, you can be Bad Neighbour in those circumstances. Obviously, if you're going to eliminate a player, that's another instance where you can obviously go Bad Neighbour. It's an example of where they can't hit you back. So all right. Moving to the next one is you can't match their production. I was playing a game. It was a practice game for a Kill Pete Open game, and we were playing what was a game of progressive, but it was a bonus-based meta progressive. And you can see that ET, who's the red player here, has actually taken 3 bonuses, and they're already well ahead of us in troops. Yeah, you can see they're on 45. They've just had their turn, collected 3 bonuses, so no one else broke them and went Bad Neighbour. The rest of us are all in the 20s, or Fanti here in Blues at 36. So you can see that ET is miles in front. And what I decided to do in this instance was I couldn't take another bonus. I couldn't take a 3rd bonus and match their production. So what I did instead was I broke their bonus. I broke ET's bonus. I didn't completely annihilate them off the board. ET understood exactly what I was doing, but I just had to slow down their production because I couldn't match them. Okay, so that's another example of where if they've got an extra, it's not the number of bonuses as well. You've got to count up exactly how many troops you're getting per turn. But given they had a troop lead already and they were getting more, you can see Fanti likes it, so does the white player. You know, we have to just slow them down. Otherwise, someone of ET's caliber, who's a very good Grandmaster, regularly towards the top 10 each season, in the leaderboard. And yeah, you just can't let someone have that big a troop lead. So that's another way of not matching. If you can't match their production, that's another reason to go bad neighbour. You don't want to do it every turn. You want to let other players do it because you don't want red to retaliate. Like, you know, a good enough player should know that I'm just slowing them down there. I'm not trying to eliminate their game or really ruin their game. I'm just slowing them down a bit. A good player's not going to retaliate in response to that. So again, there's an example of a game, and if you want to see the rest of that game, again, going down, I'll put that link in the description as well. Next is if you're down to a 1v1, well, then your opponent's got no choice but to attack you. So essentially, you know, the games and the rules about being a good neighbour in a multiplayer context just simply don't apply. And if you want to know what my 1v1 rules are, I've listed them down there. First of all, you want to break people's continents so they don't get any troop bonuses. The second one is after you've broken their bonuses, you want to take the territories down so that they get less troops next turn. And then and only then do you want to think about taking your own bonuses. So that's generally my checklist for 1v1 rules. But you can see the first one is break their continents first. But there are some other reasons why you might want to go bad neighbour. And thanks to Kulfin, he was the one that made me think about this particular slide. I brought this up on stream last night and bounced it off a few people to see if I'd forgotten anything. And he's talking about, you know, one of the things that he reminded me of is not just when you're eliminating them, but you just might want to keep someone weak. Maybe you're eliminating them in a future turn, or you know, you're trying to stop them from meeting a particular objective. So for example, let's just say that they could eliminate a player, or they could go for a cap run, or they could go for a 70% run next turn. If you can prevent any of those things, where you break some of their bonuses so they've got less troops to start their turn, then that's another reason to go bad neighbour. Obviously, in particular, if they can meet a winning condition, so as I said, a cap run or a 70% run, if you don't break them, then it has to be right for you to go bad neighbour, particularly if they're the next player to act and there's no one else left to take the responsibility of breaking their bonus. Then it makes perfect sense for you to go bad neighbour, because if you don't, the game's over. So that's a clear example of where you want to just weaken someone. You want to keep someone weak, or weaker than what they'd otherwise be the case, in order to prevent them from winning the game in some way. And lastly, of course, revenge. I'm sure I might have to do a separate series on this, or a separate Noobiversity video on this, is when's the right time to just take out revenge. I think people do it too quickly. I think they go bad neighbour in this sense and spoil both games too quickly, when they might have had a chance if they didn't. So, but obviously there is a point at which you can make the assessment that you're just not going to win the game, and so therefore for vengeful reasons that you want to go bad neighbour as well. But I'm going to put a question mark next to that one, because as I said, I think people pull the trigger too quickly on that one, and potentially lose some games where they might otherwise have won if they'd taken a more measured response. All right, so just to quickly summarise, Good Neighbour Theory is when you and an opponent or opponents don't break bonuses and you just go about your own game plans. This helps avoid that tit-for-tat cycle, that death spiral, as I called it, where people just retaliate against each other over and over and over again, and neither player ends up winning. But as I said, every rule has its exceptions, though, including when you can't match their production, when you win the game, when you're eliminating that player, when you're just trying to keep them weak, or if you're in a 1v1 situation. So there are plenty of examples where it's not correct to play Good Neighbour Theory. And as I said, I feel like players do Good Neighbour Theory too much these days. If you agree with me, please let me know in the comments below. But I did want to make this video because, as I said, that the key thing is that when you see newer players come to the game, their default is bad neighbour theory. I think they just think about it as in, I've got to get bonuses and stop other people from getting bonuses, and that's the full extent of their thought process. But hopefully with this video you've seen that Good Neighbour Theory is the correct way to play in most instances, subject to all of these exceptions. All right, I hope you got something out of this. Please drop a subscribe. If you can hit the gamer dude, where is he? Oh, it's down there. That would be great. That would really help me out. I am trying to grow the channel, but not the size of my wallet. So I'm really keen to increase these types of videos. You know, they're a bit different than just the normal gameplay type videos, but I'm hoping to get some more informational content out there, as well as some great gameplay. So if you want to see more of that from me, please drop a subscribe. Otherwise, please feel free to watch that video. Catch you in the next one. See you later, fellow noobs. Bye for now.